Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. My name is Brandon, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Sue Moore, chairman of Liberty Scorecard, an organization that measures how Colorado state lawmakers vote according to constitutional principles of individual rights, free markets, and limited government. Well, Sue, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Well, Sue, it's been quite the year at the Colorado Legislature, and I'm thankful that Liberty Scorecard was there informing Coloradans with email updates on important legislation and tracking the votes of all 100 legislators. Sue, before we get to the scores, what would you say were some of the more important and overlooked bills of the 2025 Colorado legislative session?
That's a good question. I know that there were a few that kind of got pretty far into the process and didn't get quite over the finish line, but I think they'll be back next year. I know Ken DeGraff is running a bill on criminal asset forfeiture, and he's retooling that. We're trying to help him a little bit with that. We use some AI, just stuff that will summarize and kind of input some of our metrics into that bill. It's really pretty interesting. He's done a lot of research on that. He just couldn't get the traction he needed, but that should be a bipartisan issue. That should not be, a Republican versus Democrat issue. So I know that one's going to come back, and that's a big one. Stephanie Luck pushed a bill that would actually allow legislators to post their bills, the bills that they're thinking about running before the session, because those things come rapid fire, and it's hard for a legislator or a scorecard or anybody who's interested in a certain topic to get on top of that before it gets introduced and kind of run through the bill mill. So we're hoping to see that one come back and see that one get some more traction. So those are two that kind of flew under the radar. And yeah, I'm sure there's some other one. We've got some good bills in the hopper. They just need to be a little more fine-tuned and try and get some bipartisan support. But I think those are a couple.
Well, it is encouraging that there's potential for some good legislation to pass. So often we just hear about all the bad stuff. So it's nice that we have those leaders down there like Representative DeGraff's, Representative Luck, and others who are willing to put in the work and come up with a bipartisan solution, really, because that's what's required with the Democratic majority on some of these important issues. So great to see that.
Yeah, especially with the Lux bill, it doesn't require anybody to pre-file a bill. It doesn't require anything. It just allows them to get their bill out there so that they can do their stakeholdering and, just provide a little more transparency to some of these bills. So that one was really a head scratcher, but I think she's going to fight for that. So hopefully we'll see that one again.
Great. Well, let's jump over to the scorecard here and take a look at some of the Liberty Warriors here. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Perfect. So I'm going to start off here. Let's see. Screen should be coming up. Can you see that there?
I can.
Perfect. Perfect. So this is a great resource, folks. If you're not on Liberty Scorecard's email list, you definitely want to get on there. So much great information every week during the legislative session. And this is one of the most recent emails, which are also on the website, which is a great resource. But the announcing here that the 2025 Liberty Scorecard is final. So what can you tell us, Sue, about these five Liberty Warriors?
Yeah, so Stephanie Luck has been a warrior. We call the A-rated legislators warriors. Stephanie and Ken DeGraff both have been A-rated since they've taken office. Scott Bottoms moved into that position, I think, maybe just last year. Ron Weinberg has come up from a B to an A. And just to be clear, our standards are really high. It's really hard to get an A on our scorecard. It means that you really understand and can apply the principles of individual rights, free markets, and limited government. So these people are, they're fighting, and you see these people go to the well a lot. If you're watching Colorado Channel, they're down there, they're actually fighting for amendments. And sometimes they're just trying to slow legislation, which isn't a bad idea. There's so much coming at them. So if they can, hold their ground, make some good points and fight for some good amendments, that's a big deal. So those four, who else? Oh, and a rookie of the year, I would call him, Max Brooks. He actually came in, and I think he's down in Douglas County. Yeah. So he came in and he told us he was going to get an A on our scorecard, and by gosh, he did. And And then Brandy Bradley, Mark Baisley, and Dan Woog. Dan's served in the legislature before, but they were our rated legislators. So all of these people are really, really strong, liberty-minded people, people who are going to fight for us down at the Capitol. But yeah, and the one thing that we're really especially proud of, especially this year, is we get a lot of back and forth with these legislators, especially the higher rated ones. If they're going to run a bill, sometimes they'll run it by us and say, "What do you think of this bill? Would you support this bill?" Or, if we didn't like one of their bills, they'd want to know why and, what could they do to make it better and things like that. So, we have a lot of, we keep the lines of communication open. And if anyone ever calls us and says, "Hey, I think you might have gotten this one wrong," we take a second look at it. We put it back on monitor and we address it again we have weekly Sunday meetings. So we'll take it off, discuss it again. Sometimes we'll change our position, sometimes not. But anyway, we're really proud that we have this open line of communication with these legislators, and those are the ones who are really active in that process.
Oh, that's great. I mean, so good to hear, and it's nice that we have legislators who really want to uphold our constitutional principles. Wish it was more of them than just the five A rated and the three B
Right.
rated, but
Well, and on
nonetheless,
that note, Brandon, 3 years ago, we only had seven A, Bs, and Cs, I believe. Last year we had 13. This year we had 19. So they are getting better overall. We haven't changed our methodology, not at all. So there are more people paying, more of these legislators are paying attention, and they've decided that our scorecard is meaningful and that we provide a resource for them as well. So to have 19 A, Bs, and Cs, that's pretty darn good, we think.
oh, that's great. It shows the impact that Liberty Scorecard has. I mean, I love the idea that these legislators get these emails, they get this feedback from their constituents or from everybody there at Liberty Scorecard. But it's this great guide. I mean, that anybody in Colorado can pull up the website, and here we are at Liberty Scorecard. Co.us, folks. This is the one. This is definitely a huge resource. You want to be checking this throughout the legislative session. Please bookmark this. Remember this for next year, but such a great place where you can check out, most of the bills that are being heard. I mean, that's a monumental task, with 700 bills being introduced. It's it's very difficult to keep track of them all. So, kudos to your team for getting together every week, looking at the bills, and then communicating and building that actual connection with the legislators to give them that feedback. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. And we're non-confrontational. We don't we don't call out anyone. We try really hard to play it down the middle. And like I said, if anybody, and occasionally we hear from a Democrat saying, I mean, they're paying attention too. They'll say, well, if you didn't like my bill, what if I did, so it's, like I said, it's open lines of communication. We don't care who's calling us or, what their complaint is. We always treat it the same way. We put it back on monitor. We give it a second look. We listen to testimony. Well, our purpose really is just to provide the best, most objective scorecard we can in Colorado. So if you believe in these principles and you can apply them, you're going to do well on our scorecard. If you can't, then, the chips fall where they may.
So and it's so great too, people who are just getting involved in be wanting to be a little bit more active in their community, maybe build those connections with their current legislators. This is a great resource because you can type in your address, you can put in here, you can find out who your legislator is if you don't know, find out what their rating is, what bills they've sponsored, how they voted. I mean, really a great resource, not just for the legislative session, but of course for elections as well.
Right. And yeah, and if you scroll up, we also post, we just started this last year, but it'll say voting records and sponsored bills. So if you click on that, I just got so this is sponsored bills from this year. I don't have the voting records up. The data files are just huge. But if you wanted to look up, somebody who might be primaried or somebody who might think about primarying and you don't think their voting record is so good, if you click on their sponsored bills, it'll tell you what they think is important. And it might also give you an indication as to who they're carrying water for, who's funding their campaigns. And we're going to work on that over the summer, try and get that link active as well, either to Tracer or there's an organization called Transparency USA. But you'll be able to click on your legislator and see who's sending them large checks and, kind of follow the money that way. And we don't have that yet. It might cost us some money. But we think that that's a good resource for people to understand, what motivates some of these legislators to vote the way they do.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to see that. I'll be looking forward to digging through there because yeah, so often the rest of the story is told when the money starts getting involved, who's sponsored these candidates on their campaigns, who's the big contributors. And of course, you can kind of see sometimes why they vote the way they do.
Yeah, and which bills they sponsor. Sometimes you scratch your head and say, you did what? And you call yourself a Republican. So anyway, yeah, again, and we provide this resource. Anybody who wants to use it, however they want to use it, all we do is create this website and keep it updated. And whoever wants to promote it or whoever wants to tear it down, that's fine. But like I said, we just provide the data. We create the resource, and people do with it what they will.
No, that's great. I mean, it's such a valuable tool for people here in Colorado, especially all of us in what I'd call the liberty community who want to see the legislators just vote more pro-liberty. And I got to say, yeah, just highlighting Max Brooks here, as a freshman rookie legislator to come in there and have that mindset of fighting for constitutional values and limited government. I mean, that's impressive to see because it's tough. I talked to a lot of these legislators in that first year, they're so overwhelmed and inundated. They've been working so hard during the campaign season. Then November hits, okay, election's over. They find out they're elected, that massive rush and that all the excitement there. And then it's like, okay, well, you got 3 weeks to get your first set of bills in. And then it's just a whirlwind from there. So for them to be able to stand tall, stand up and have a backbone and say, no, I'm going to vote this way because that's maybe that's why they were elected and actually stick with it is always impressive because that first year can be really tough for a lot of these
No, it
people.
has to be overwhelming just learning all the rules, figuring out who the players are, and knowing how far you can push, and just understanding the parliamentary procedure down there. It's daunting. So, and then trying to figure out what kind of bills you want to run. In fact, Max reached out to us before the session and had an idea for a bill, and we said, we don't really think that's a great bill. He ran it anyway, and it it died. But the point is that he was paying attention. He was trying to do the right thing. He thought he had a good idea, but it's and no one takes it personally. We don't take it personally. If you disagree, that's fine. That's part of the process. But yeah, so we're really impressed with him. And again, like I said, C is a really good score on our scorecard. So those people are worth supporting. It's when you get farther down and they get into the red numbers that there should be cause for concern.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, I think the total was 23 freshman legislators out of the 100 this year. And of course, that's split between Republicans and Democrats. But to see, like we said, Max Brooks, Representative Richardson, Rebecca Kelty, Dusty Johnson, I mean, John Carson, a lot of these newer people, Larry Sukla, a lot of new people popping up and coming in and still able to maintain a C score is pretty good as well.
Yeah, yeah, and if you watch them, I guarantee some of those are going to rise to the top, in their second year and their third year, and so yeah, that's just kind of the process. But it's a learning curve. Like I said, procedurally, there's a lot to learn, and they'll find different resources. Hopefully, they'll tap into our resources and try and bring their scores up. But we encourage people to, glom on to a Stephanie Luck or a Ken DeGraff or a Scott Bottoms. And we actually had a legislator say, "Wow, you actually do my job for me." And I'm like, well, that's just music to my ears. We think we do a pretty good job. We're an extra resource. We've got another dozen people looking at your bills, looking at the bills, and providing some input. So, just consider it for what it is. But if it's just you and your aide trying to study a bill, you're going to struggle. So look at our comments, see how the principles apply, and use the resource. That Sonia Jacques Lewis, she was the Democrat who had to step down early in the session. So she was kind of a fluke. There just weren't enough votes in her record to really be reflective. But um, yeah, so yeah, you get into the reds and you kind of scratch your head and say, maybe you need to show up for some town hall meetings and ask them, why can't you crack 50% on the Liberty Scorecard or cut or whatever resources are out there? That's concerning because they're out on the campaign trail telling everyone that they're fiscal conservatives, and sometimes their vote record says otherwise.
No, that's a great point too, because that's exactly how it is, right? That when they're campaigning, they sound like libertarians, and then when they're actually voting or serving, they don't. They vote a lot like Democrats, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You know, talk is cheap, as we all know. Politicians love to hype themselves up and talk about what how great they are, but yeah, and then the votes prove it. I mean, you have some legislators who've been down there quite some years on this list that we're looking at right now, who unfortunately don't seem to prioritize constitutional principles. You know, they might say otherwise, but hey, folks, this is the proof here. You can read it yourself. And what's so great is you can actually go into that voting record and really dig in and see if you agree with Liberty Scorecard. I mean, that's part of the interesting aspect to the website. All so much documentation.
Right. You know, we're not perfect. I'll admit we miss some bills, we get them wrong, but we're collecting a lot of data points. You know, we collect their third, or excuse me, their final committee vote, depending on which committees they're sitting on. They'll produce a certain number of votes, and then we collect their final floor vote. So for the most part, we've got over 400, 400 data points for each of these legislators. So even if we're not perfect, we think we paint a pretty accurate picture as to how they're voting and whether or not they understand our principles. So you get down into the Democrats, and they kind of vote as a block. Bob Marshall's in kind of a swing district, so he tends to be a little more center left, I guess you'd say. But then you get down toward the bottom, and they're all in the teens. So, and they don't care. No, I mean they don't care about our scorecard. Sometimes, I mean, we do support some Democrat sponsored bills. We don't care where the idea comes from. If it's a good idea, we'll support it. So we're not looking at necessarily who the sponsors are. We're just looking at whether or not the bill supports liberty principles, free markets, promotes individual rights, those kinds of things, property rights. Yeah, free markets. Anyway, so it's not, we're not just looking at Republican bills, we're looking at all of them. So 700 some, we rated 439. And the reason we'll skip some is because they'll have conflicting principles. They might be a good idea on property rights, but it increases, it has a fiscal note and it increases the size of government. So those get thrown out. We don't do license plates. We don't do memorials. Things like that get tossed. But and sometimes we just, as a group, if we've got 8 or 10 people on the Zoom call on Sunday afternoon, if we can't agree, we don't rate the bill. And everybody has a pocket veto. If they say, somebody says, I really like this bill, you all oppose it, but I really like it, then we don't rate that either. So it's yeah, but we give every bill a good hard look, a good robust conversation. And but if somebody wants to stand on a certain bill in opposition, then we just don't rate that. But like I said, we still did 439 bills out of the 657 that were introduced. So given all the data that we collect, like I said, I think we paint a pretty good picture of what these people understand and whether or not they can apply liberty principles.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's so much data out there. And just to click in on Stephanie Luck here, for example, so people can kind of see what's there. I mean, this is great resource for your own representative or senator for that represents your community or your district. But I love being able to see the lifetime score as well and to see how it's changed year over year. And it's so great. Look at all this data. You can go back to 2021, go through the bills, the votes on all the bills that you tracked and kept an eye on, and you can really kind of get an idea of how these legislators think and what their priorities are when they vote. And it really tells a good story. I mean, it really does explain a lot and really enjoy that. So yeah, great resource for people. Really encourage people to check it out and to support Liberty Scorecard. I'm really excited everything you said about what's coming with campaign finance and really just expanding it. I mean, adding stuff. I mean, the scorecard was such a great resource already, but then to go in and add the voting records and the sponsored bills, I think that's pretty cool as well. So I'll
Yeah,
click
yeah,
on
we're
over
working
there.
on. We're always trying to make it better. Always trying to make it more complete. We're actually going to have to redesign the entire website this year for a lot of reasons. But everything costs money. We try and do it on a shoestring, but if you can throw a few dollars our way, we sure would appreciate that. There is a donate button on the website. Yeah, our biggest expenses really are MailChimp and our bill tracking software. It's maybe $1,000 a year or something, but we pass the hat and try and cover our expenses. But to keep this thing going and to improve on it, it costs money. So I'll give that quick plug there. But this is what the legislators get every Monday morning. We send them, it's a complete list of whatever bills we've rated thus far. So it tells them, which principles we feel the bill has supported or violated, and then we add some comments to the far right, and just tell them why we think the bill does what it does. But we're using AI a lot more too. I don't know how much you've dipped into that, but AI has just been invaluable. My son actually helped us set this up, and we've created what we call the Liberty lens on AI. And it's really just a profile. It's kind of what would Milton Friedman think about this bill? What would Thomas Sowell think about this bill? How would Ron Paul vote on this bill? Things like that. So you kind of plug the bill into that. It spits out a support or oppose, and then it gives you, well, first of all, it summarizes the bill because some of these are unreadable. So it'll give you a handful of bullet points about what the bill does. And then you can go back later on if amendments have been added to the bill. You say, okay, now that this amendment's been proposed, would that change your position on this? And it's not perfect. AI is certainly not perfect. And sometimes the more you drill down, the more questions you ask, you can actually get it to reverse its position. But it's helped us tremendously. Just kind of a lot of these comments, these summaries are AI generated. We have to tweak them a little bit and edit, but it saved us a ton of time in the end, and I think it's provided just another tool in our tool bag, if you will.
No, definitely. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I would use this. I did the legislative live stream every Sunday night during the session, and sometimes, a bill would come up, it'd be being heard in committee that week, and I say, well, it kind of sounds like maybe it's a good bill, but sometimes, like you said, it's not always easy to tell because the way they word things and what revised statute they're changing and this and that isn't always exactly clear what that change means in the big picture. So Liberty Scorecard is a great resource. I could jump in here and say, oh, okay, well, here we go. We got House Bill 1057 or 1060 and opposed, and here's why. Okay, great. Well, that's a good information to try and get out there to people. So awesome resource. Yeah, I can't applaud Liberty Scorecard enough. I think it's incredible. People need to sign up for the email list. Please support Liberty Scorecard. And yeah, we got to stand up. I mean, these are not just constitutional principles, but they're Colorado principles, individual rights, free markets, and limited government for sure. That's how we're going to create a free state and a wealthy society where everybody's a little bit better off.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, and a quick plug for our team. I'm the chairman. Victoria Partridge is our vice chairman. She's been a longtime activist in Denver, and oh, thank you. She's a flight attendant for a major airline, and she's been on different boards. She actually ran for a House District 2 several years ago, but she's been involved in politics for a while. Steve Dorman is our treasurer. He's a huge Jeffco political activist. And Kelly Haggerty is down in La Plata County, and she's actually recruited several of our volunteers down there. And these folks are good. They certainly understand property rights. They know what's going on. They understand water rights. They've got a whole different viewpoint that we don't always get here on the Front Range. So Kelly's our secretary now. And like I said, we've got 8 or 10 other volunteers. And just depending on the week, we'll have 6 or 8 or 12 people on the Zoom call. But, everybody's got different backgrounds, different priorities, different viewpoints. And, the process just works. We usually can come to an agreement on a bill. And if we can't, we just, we let it go. No one takes it personally. But yeah, so that's the team, and I'm real proud of the people. I couldn't be happier with the folks that I'm working with, and it gets better every year. So these people are really understanding these principles, really digging in, doing a lot of research, listening to testimony, and just kind of working their tails off for 120 days. So we're glad it's over. Everybody needs some time off, but we think we do a pretty good job. We think we provide a resource. So.
Definitely a much needed resource for sure. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Appreciate the efforts of everybody on the team and all the work that it entails because it is a lot. And it's great to see the consistency of having so many people year over year as part of your team because then they can kind of flesh out the whole story. I think, I've been doing this for a few years now and and then seeing the changes year over year and say, oh, I remember that bill from last year. They brought it back or they amended it or they made a change. Or when they introduce a new bill this year, you say, okay, well, that's going to tie into the previous year's bill to try and modify something there. So yeah, having that kind of consistency
Yeah.
over several years, I think has a huge advantage doing that.
Yeah, and you see patterns. Sometimes you read a bill and you know who sponsored it. You just, just because of the way it's written or, what the subject matter is. Yeah, but there's some institutional knowledge for sure. The longer you do it, the more, I think the better we get at it. And our newer bill analysts are learning on the job, and they're doing a great job. They know where to look, which resources to tap, where to look up, which websites, who to call, and they've got their own resources as well. So it's it just builds, but we've got a really great team. I'm very proud of them.
That's great. Well, any final thoughts, Sue, in terms of, you provide this incredible resource for people and encourage people to use it, but any other thoughts that you can think of just to kind of give some people a level of encouragement about moving Colorado in the right direction, more towards these constitutional principles?
Yeah, like I said, we do see it getting better. The makeup of our legislative, the makeup of the Republican side of the legislature. And you get into some of the lower scores, and if you see an opportunity there where you think that your representative isn't doing their job, there are opportunities. There's a wealth of knowledge on our website. If you decide you want to primary some or promote someone to primary someone, that information's there as well. But overall, I think our people, our Republicans, most of them are kind of liberty curious. They kind of know what the right thing to do is, but they just need to be taught. And maybe they need to look for mentors like, Stephanie or Ken or Scott Bottoms or Ron Weinberg. So you want to encourage them. And that's an important thing too. All these people that are working so hard, they need encouragement. They get discouraged. It's tough down there. It's a battle. I've had more than one legislator say, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. So they need your support. They need your money. Be judicious in how you support them, but send them a note every once in a while, or show up to testify on one of their bills. They really appreciate that. That really builds their confidence. So support the good ones. Maybe wag your finger at some of the bad ones. Show up for their town halls. Ask them tough questions. But I do see things moving in the right direction. We just need more good people to step up and run for office.
Oh, 100% well said. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that you hit the nail on the head there with the kind of the two sides of the coin, right? Supporting and really trying to prop up the good ones, the ones that who are these leaders who are down there, five people against 95 other people telling them they're all wrong and saying, no, here's why we got to vote the right way on this bill, even when their caucus is against them often. I mean, they definitely need that encouragement, that support. And people should, if you're looking for a good liberty leaders in Colorado, I mean, this is a place to go find them. And then, yeah, like you said, the other side of that coin is, yeah, there's some people on there who have some questionable votes, questionable decisions. And for me, it's the most frustrating thing when you get people who are in the deepest red districts, like the strongest Republican districts, where a Republican or where a Democrat doesn't even run because there's no chance they're going to lose by like 20,000 votes or something. And then you see those Republicans kind of some of the softest votes, and they're not that much better than the Democrats. And for me, that just is crazy because it's like, hey, you have the opportunity here to be this, torchbearer for liberty and to be this person who's going to be the loudest voice and stand up the tallest. And unfortunately, oftentimes those they don't do it. And it's like, come on, people. So being able to have a resource like Liberty Scorecard is so invaluable for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, to praise the people that are doing yeoman's duty down there at the Capitol. It's hard, it's lonely, and they get discouraged. So we need to prop them up.
100%. Well, thank you so much, Sue. I really appreciate your time. Look forward to talking to you again, and maybe we can get together or get on video again, kind of maybe towards the next legislative session, maybe before it starts, to kind of give people a refresher, or get some people who are maybe new to wanting to pay attention to be an active participant in our legislative process and kind of give them those tools. Because this is something, like I said, people, you got to sign up for this email list. You got to be part of the conversation here and know what's going on with Liberty Scorecard. Because every week you'll be one of the most well-informed people in Colorado if you're on this email list.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. And thank you for all you do. especially for winning the Vern Bickle Award at the Independence Institute. That's a really high honor, and you're doing great work. We all appreciate what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sue. Appreciate you. That's a big compliment coming from you and all your years of activism and fighting for liberty in Colorado. So thank you so much. And look forward to talking to you again soon. So appreciate your time and take care.
All right, thanks, Brandon.